In this video, I'm going to show you the exact negotiation process that I followed that's helped me to average 10K in raises per year for the past 6 years, including 3 raises of over 10K. Now, while my negotiation skills are now advanced, it wasn't always that way. And my first negotiation was one of the most anxiety-inducing experiences of my life. So if you feel a similar way, you are not alone. It is so common. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be simpler and it can be easier. And I'm going to walk you through the exact 3 steps that I followed to take most of that stress and anxiety out of negotiation and increase and maximize your chances of success at the same time so that you can feel confident asking for a raise every time. Now, the key point is this. I know for a fact that had I not negotiated, I would be way behind where I am now. And I'll tell you a really quick story to show how I know. So in 2022, my company had a full raise freeze. So not a single person got a raise. That is except me. And I got a raise by following the process that I'm about to tell you. And I managed to negotiate a 12K raise, which was a 20% increase in that period where nobody else was getting a raise. And because nobody was getting a raise, that showed me that I know if I had done nothing, that I would have been included in that bucket with everyone else, and I'd be 12K behind where I am now. And that was 3 years ago. So if I extrapolate that over 3 years, that's 36K worth of income that I would not have contributing to my life being better at this point. So that is an extremely serious amount of money that we're talking about and demonstrates the importance of negotiation. And I'm going to show you that system in just a moment. But first, I want to explain that it's not just me, and I want to demonstrate that principle of negotiation, meaning you get more salary, just the act of it, it doesn't just impact me. It impacts you, impacts everyone. So there's a study in the Journal of Organizational Behavior, which I'm going to link in the description. And what they did was they looked at people entering their career for the first time who negotiated salary and those who didn't negotiate salary. And what happened was they proved that those who negotiated salary earned on average $5,000 more than those who didn't. And the 5,000 is just an average. So if you imagine there are some people in that group that have been pushing 10,000, probably more dollars just by negotiating compared to the group who didn't. So it just demonstrates the real importance of putting your cards on the table and negotiating. So I just wanted to make that super clear that there is a really big opportunity cost to not negotiating, and it's a key part of growing your salary quickly and consistently. So with that said, let's have a look at my 3-step process, which is the best way to negotiate a salary in 2025. So there are 3 critical steps to successful salary negotiation while minimizing the stress and the anxiety that's involved in the process. And what normally happens is the 3rd step is heavily focused on in most content, which I'll share with you in a minute. But there are actually 2 initial steps which are really critical before you get to that 3rd step. So let's have a look at what they are now. So the first step is your case. And your case is essentially the set of reasons which are going to prove that you deserve a raise. That is the case that you are going to make. And for me, it needs to be strong, it needs to be compelling, and it needs to be aligned with your business, the direction your business is going. You know, if your business does, I don't know, what does it do? It does manufacturing of milk bottles, and you've asked to be promoted to director of knife manufacturing, that's not going to happen, is it? Because it's not aligned with your business. So It has to be aligned with your business and where your business is going in that trajectory. And it also needs to be aligned with your manager. They are the most critical person to get on board in your growth trajectory and your salary trajectory. They can be a blocker to your success or a cheerleader for your success. So that case is critical. It needs to be strong, compelling, and aligned with business and manager. So that's the first step. And we're going to go through each of these in detail in a minute. So don't worry about that being quite short and quick. I'm going to come back to it and go into the detail. The second step is the initial proposal of your raise to your manager. So you've got your case, you know what all your reasons are. This is private. The second step is to share that with your manager. And there is really a right way to do that and a wrong way to do it. And we'll go into detail on exactly how to do that in a way that starts to get your manager more and more on board with your case and turn them into that cheerleader, because that is the most important part. Now, that's the second step. So say we've got our great case, we've shared it with our manager, and we're starting to get them on board with being a cheerleader for our success. The final step, which is the one that most content focuses on, is the actual negotiation process. So there is a process to negotiation to get to a number that you're both happy with, or maybe a promotion and a number for your raise and your salary that you're both happy with. And that process is very important, but those first two steps are foundational to your success in the negotiation. So that's why we're going to start there before we get to the process, the negotiation process. So quick recap, the three steps are your case, strong, compelling, and aligned, the initial proposal that you share with your manager to start getting them on board with being a cheerleader for your success, and then the negotiation process itself up until the point where you're accepting an offer that you're happy with. So let's dig into number one, your case. So what is the foundation of a great case? What do you need first? Well, if you're going to be asking for something, you need to know what that thing is, yes or no. Yes, right? You can't ask for something that you don't know what it is. So what a great case starts with is knowing what you want, and whether that's a promotion, whether that is a promotion and a raise. Usually it's extremely rare to get a promotion without a raise, and that's where most of the big raises are unlocked through promotion, or more responsibility. What is it that you want? So that needs to be the basis of your case. You need to know what you're going to be asking for and what you want. A great case usually intertwines both an ask for increased responsibility or promotion. Promotion comes with increased responsibility as default, but you might not be quite ready for promotion, but you do want to get closer. So asking for increased responsibility, and also an ask for more money in line with that. And the reason for that is because by asking for more responsibility, you're proving that you want to stick around with the business and grow the value that you can bring to the business. Just asking for a raise is kind of like a one-way ticket. And so you may deserve it. You may just deserve a raise because you're doing more than you should be. But by adding in the additional ask of more responsibility, you're showing to the business that you do want to stick around, you're going to be here, you're committed, you care about growth. And these things are very, very important in a company making a decision to pay you more money. So the best cases are going to include an ask for some increase in responsibility as well as the raise. Okay, so know what you want, combine the amount with the increased responsibility, those two things. If it's a promotion and increased responsibility, or just increased responsibility, those are the two things that are important. And then you're going to build up the rationale for that below. So what are the key things that are going to prove that you deserve that raise? And there are a few things that are most important. The first one is the value that you bring to the business. So what value can you bring to the business? You can break it down into two key categories. One is I'm going to do it in terms of what the business really cares about, which is money. That's the most important thing to any business, is profit. So there are two ways that you can impact profit. You can reduce costs, or you can increase revenues generated. So the question that you've got to ask yourself is, how has the work that I've done led to a reduction in costs? Maybe it's through some efficiency that you've introduced, or how has the work that I've done increased revenue? So for example, you could be a marketing person who's brought in more leads, and every lead is worth a certain amount of revenue to the business. So that would be a way that you've brought in revenue. So the idea is you build up a case which proves that your role is significantly more valuable than the salary that you're going to be paid now, and the salary that you're going to be asking for as well. So the best cases can increase the value of their role to at least three times the salary. Not everyone can get there, and I do understand that not all roles are super linked to revenue or costs. So sometimes you've got to make a few assumptions. Like, for example, I'll give you another example. If you work in, say, customer operations, say you're a customer operations manager, and maybe you're working on the front lines and you help your team to improve the customer satisfaction with the inbounds that you get from customers. So how are you going to convert that to revenue or costs? Well, you can make a few assumptions. You could say, well, that increased customer satisfaction, say from 70% to 90%, means that a certain percentage of those customers won't churn. And you can make an assumption about that. And then you could say, okay, well, that's X number of customers per year. And each customer is worth, say, £500 to the business. So that many customers times £500 is the amount that you've saved the business by improving the customer satisfaction related to inbound. So that's just an example of how you could take something that is quite far away from direct revenue link, make a few assumptions, and put it into the case. And it's okay to make assumptions. The important thing is that the assumptions are reasonable. Like, you don't want to be saying like, okay, maybe we bring in 10,000 new customers a year. If you say I improve customer satisfaction to 90%, and we increase the number of customers we bring in by 9,000, so 90% of the customers coming in are from my 20% increase in customer satisfaction, that seems a bit far-fetched. So you got to use your common sense to figure out what a reasonable amount is when you're making those assumptions, because you are going to be sharing this with your manager and they are going to critique it. So you got to be able to give your thought process when you talk about it with them and take on that feedback. So it's good to have thought about it in advance. So let's recap where we are so far. So on this case, we've got figured out what we want, both in increased responsibility and salary. We have come up with the value that we're bringing to the business, and we're aiming for 3 times the salary. What else do we need to bring? Another thing that is critical to the case, which I'd suggest that you bring in, is that you make clear how much your responsibilities have grown since your last raise. So what have you been doing since your last raise, which has grown in responsibility or been an improvement in what you're owning? Or maybe you've taken on a new process, maybe you're managing someone now. Anything like that could be an increase in responsibility. Maybe you've taken on a budget or something like that. Anything like that, you got to get that down, because it's the increase in responsibility is the route to more salary. More salary is paid for people who take on more responsibility, which is harder to do and more risk. Therefore, you get more salary as a result. That is the clearest route to higher salary. And it requires more skill. So by taking on more responsibility, requires more skill, and therefore you get more salaries. So by showing those things that you've increased in responsibility, you are making clear to your organization and to your manager that the salary that you were on, which was based on that previous level of responsibility, is no longer sufficient because you've increased so much. So that's the idea. And having this in mind now, this case in mind, you can actually start to think about what decisions you could make right now and what actions you would take right now in order to, by the point that you do want to share this case, have an incredible case with like lots of increases in responsibility and lots of value that you've brought into the business, especially in terms of monetary value. If you can just get value that isn't monetary, that's also fine. Just get it on there. It's better to have it on than not on there. So that's your case. It's going to be strong, compelling, and aligned. And I suppose actually we didn't touch on aligned there. Where you're asking for more responsibility, it's good to think about the direction that the business is going in and where the routes to promotion and progression are going to be, because you can be tactical about where you want to go. If there is clearly going to be routes opening up or space opening up in a certain part of the company, then maybe you want to say that you want to get promoted into those, because it'd be more likely that you get promoted there, and it could open up the speed of progression for you to those more senior roles. So that's a key part. And another part is to figure out, where's your manager at? Where do they want to get promoted? Is your promotion, does it have to be into their role, or is there opportunity for promotion in the same team with them as your manager, but into maybe a slightly higher role, a slightly different role with them still as your manager? So you want to figure out, are they going to be a blocker to you getting promoted or taking on more responsibility? And therefore, do you need to also be trying to help them get promoted, or is there going to be a route to promotion and progression that doesn't necessarily require your manager to be promoted or moving on or leaving or something like that? And you can decide on what you're going to ask for based on that. So if your manager is going to get promoted, it does need to get promoted in order for you to progress. Maybe you'll just ask for more responsibility and say that you're keen on getting promoted, but you understand that the promotion would be into your manager's role, and therefore you want to talk to them about it and try to figure out, okay, what do they want? What route do they want to go on? How can you help them to get to progress? Because really, everyone wants to progress, pretty much. So by telling your manager that you do want to get promoted, then they can start to help you. And then when they take their case to their seniors and say, look, I'm ready for promotion, one of the first things their seniors are going to ask them, which I've been asked before, is, okay, well, who's going to take your role? How have you thought about succession planning? And then they can be like, oh, don't worry, we've been working on it for the past year, and Tom is completely ready for promotion. Here are all the reasons why. Here's the case that we've created together. So really, you can, that's sort of showing you an example of how you can become that united force where they're a cheerleader for your success, and it's like integrating with their progression. So that gives you a kind of summary of the importance of the case, how to make it strong, compelling, and aligned. And one thing that I'd like to note on the case is that it fits within my personal proprietary framework, which I call the Salary Boost Blueprint, and it's made up of 3 steps. Perform, which is all about performing at your best. Are you going to get promoted if you're performing crap? No, you're not. You got to perform at your best to get promoted and get raises. Develop, which is all about the speed of growth. It's your potential and your ambition. Are you ambitious to keep getting better? And do you have potential? Are you getting better? Can you get better quickly? And then the last one is negotiate. And that's where we are right now. We're talking about negotiation. So the case fits within that negotiation part of my framework. And there is a specific way of which I'm sharing some of with you, but there is a specific way to do it incredibly effectively, which I call the salary case hack. And I have a specific template that I share with all my clients that has step-by-step instructions of exactly how to execute the salary case hack. It's almost like the next level of this video, if you will, and it provides a bit more help and support. And we offer that to all of our clients. So if you are interested in exploring the salary case hack, just drop a comment on the video with salary case hack, and I will DM you. Or you can book a call directly with me as well with a link in the description. I'm available every weekday. But yeah, feel free to book a call and I'll jump on with you and I'll discuss and I'll let you know what the salary case hack is and see if I can help. So that was the first one, the case. Now I want to talk about the initial proposal. And this is the proposal that you make to your manager to kind of introduce your ask for a raise. And this is where you're going to be starting to get them on board with being a cheerleader for your success, because you're coming together. So this is the first time you're communicating your desire for more with your manager. This is when you come together. So this is where you start to impact them and try to make them into a cheerleader for your success. So that's what is so important about this initial proposal. And I think you'll remember I said there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. Now, the wrong way to do it, if you think about this, about your raise, put yourself in your manager's shoes, and raises are happening, say every summer you have raises, and you are a manager planning out the raises for your team. You want to make sure everyone's happy, but you also want to make sure they're paid fairly. And you think everyone's happy, you think everyone is paid fairly, you've planned your raises out, and then 1 month before the raises are due to be added to people's salaries and people are due to get their raises, you have one of your team members put a call in your calendar, and on the call, suddenly they say, oh, I want a really big raise, blah, 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 blah. Here are all my reasons why, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, whoa, wow, okay, I was not ready for that. This is the first you've mentioned of it. I had no idea you wanted a raise. Oh, by the way, it's too late because all the budgeting's already been done. So it's going to be another 12 months at least, and we need to discuss this in more detail. So that gives you an example of the wrong way to do it. That would be a big shock. It would be hard for your manager to get on board with it because you've not brought them along in the process, and you've just kind of dumped it on them at a point that is very, very late in the day. And now they're also going to be worrying that you're not happy. So the better way to do it is to align it with your development and your development conversations, and to warm up your manager bit by bit. So the key is not to shock them. And you can I always recommend that people have at least monthly development chats, which are driven by you, not driven by your manager. You drive the content of those chats, and you can start to warm them up in those and say, look, I've been thinking about my future at the company. I really want to stay here. I see big things for me at this company, and I want more responsibility, and I want a pay rise with that responsibility. So how can we keep me progressing at the rate that I want to, and keep me involved in projects that are critical for this organization so that my responsibilities can increase? That's the kind of thing you might say. That's the way you might introduce it. And then you'll have it starting to have a conversation about it in those sessions. You could also start to ask them about, okay, if I was to get promoted, what could the role look like? What kind of things do I need to do in order to get that promotion? And are you looking to get promoted? In order for me to get promoted, do you have to get promoted? How would that work? And then you have an open debate, open discussion with them about these kinds of topics, and they don't become taboo. Often they become very taboo. And I found that managers don't often speak to reports about them because they get a bit nervous about it. But you raising them in these sessions breaks down that wall, and eventually both you and your manager get into a rhythm. You actually get good at talking about those types of things. So ask the questions in the dev sessions, ask your manager the questions. If you don't have dev sessions, book them in. Don't have it be a shock. Start with a soft introduction. Oh, I've been thinking about my future. What kind of could that look like? What kind of progression could it look like? I also want to increase my salary. So how can we make that happen with also increasing my responsibility and me delivering more value for the business? Like, you can introduce it slowly. And then once you have this kind of understanding between you and your manager, you've sort of spoken about it a few times, then you can drop your case, which is basically, when I say drop, I make it sound a bit too extreme of a moment. You can introduce your case to them. You can say, look, I know we've been talking a lot about my progression and my development and my salary, and I've actually been doing some like much more detailed thinking on it, and I've started to pull my thoughts together in a document. I'm hoping to get together what I actually want in more detail, make it really clear so that we can work on it together. And I'm also hoping to get together what I think shows how much value I've brought to this business, so that I can come up with a fair ask for what I think I'm worth and what my salary should be. And you can send that via message. You don't even have to say that to your manager if it makes it less nerve-wracking for you. It's fine to send something like that via message. And then you could say, is it okay if I send something over to you by the end of the week or something like that? And then I'd love to get your feedback on it, and then have a call with you where we can discuss it and maybe we can adjust it. I can get your feedback. So that's the way that you pre-prepare your manager, show them that you want them to be on board and part of the process. That's absolutely critical, that they feel like you're kind of in this together. You want them to be a big part of this process, and that you've warmed them up, that then it's not a big shock to them. So the last thing that I just want to notice about this initial proposal is budget cycles, which not many people talk about. So every company has a budget cycle. Pretty much every company sets an annual budget. Some of them check in on those budgets at different points in the year. There's monthly, quarterly, halfly, and adjust. The annual budget is the best point to ensure that your manager knows about your salary before that point. Because that is the easiest point to get anything budgeted or changed for your salary. So not every company requires this to happen, but in my experience, I've found that it can be a big blocker, the budget. So for example, when there was a wage freeze at my company, that would have blocked everyone's salary except mine, because I managed to follow a different process. But if you can time your asks with the budget, before the budget, so your manager knows, they can put that forward and make sure that at a minimum they've budgeted for what you want, so that if the time comes around and you do prove that you're worth that it's ready. They might not tell you that they've budgeted for what you want, but the standard practice as a manager is to think about it, and if they think you could be worth that amount by that point, then they'll budget it in. So that is a key thing to note, is to figure out when the budget cycle is. Your HR team will be able to tell you, so suggest asking them when the budget cycle is, or you could ask the senior leader of your team when the budget is set, or you could ask the finance team. Like, there are a bunch of routes to figure it out. Most companies are pretty open with when budgets are set. And the last thing to note is that there might be a few points of adjustment through the year. So there are points at which that can change. So if you miss that, don't worry. There are usually points of adjustment, and some companies you don't even need that. It's for some companies it's different, but a lot of companies it is like that. So for those that it is, it's important to know, so that you can increase your chances of success by making sure you get that initial ask in before the budget is set. So that's the second one, how to propose it, timing of the proposal as well with your manager. Now, the last step is the negotiation process, which I was telling you about earlier. And it's all about that discussion with your manager, taking on feedback, and then following that, keeping the momentum up. And this is what most people do focus on. And so we'll go into it. It's important. It's an important step of the process, but you have to think about it now. If it's all gone well so far, we've built a really strong, compelling, and aligned case. We've been speaking to our manager for quite a while about this. They're aligned. They know what we want. It fits in with what they want, fits in with where the business is going and where the opportunities are. So you've got this really compelling case sitting behind it, and you've introduced it really effectively with your manager. So where you are now is you're ready to go into a call with your manager to speak about your case, and you're going to take on board their feedback, discuss it. And the most important thing here is to maintain like a curious and open approach to the call. If you start to get defensive about your case doc and what's on there, then it will shut your manager down. They will start to get defensive, and it will cut them off as being a cheerleader for your success, which is obviously so important, which was what we've been talking about before this point. So it's so key to ask questions, come from a position of where could I be wrong here, and how can we together make this the most compelling case and the best outcome for me and for us. So that's the kind of position where you're coming from, and that's how I would approach these calls and how I have approached these calls. Ask questions, note down their comments on the doc as you go. See where they think you've been over ambitious, maybe with your the value that you've brought. Why do they think that? Okay, maybe, and then you're maybe going to go away and adjust, or maybe you're going to go away and think about it in a bit more and do a bit more analysis. Maybe you need to get a bit more data or something like that to back it up. So they are going to help you if you've approached that call in the right way and get their feedback in the right way. And you can discuss it on the call if you feel confident. If you're getting the feedback in live time and you feel like you could ask them more questions about that specific bit, or you'd like to pry into it, discuss it a bit more, that's good. You can do that. Remember to keep that curious approach. But if you feel nervous or anxious and you just want to take on board the feedback, that's also fine. Just say, okay, I'm just taking all this on board. I'm going to go away and think about it. Like, this is super useful. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm going to go away, think about it, and adjust my case afterwards. That's a completely valid way of doing it as well, if you're feeling a bit more anxious and nervous about that, like kind of live discussion. So there's your first step, is to get into that call, get the feedback. Then you're going to take on board the feedback. You're going to show your manager you've thought about it. You're not just going to say blanket no to something they've said. You're going to do the additional layer. So if they challenge something and you disagree, then do the additional layer of thinking, figure out what you need to find out in order to show that your point is correct, or give your point more weighting. And then you're going to go back to them and say, hey, I've looked into this. I know you made a good point, but I actually did some digging and I found that this data point, and it kind of actually shows that what I'd originally put was right. What do you think? That kind of question. And then they might come back and ask another question, and maybe you go back to them again. But that's the way to approach feedback if you don't agree with it. A lot of the time, they'll give good feedback and you agree with it, and then you'll adjust the case. A lot of the time, they'll give you feedback that actually strengthens the case. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, don't forget this project that you did that was super valuable, and then you can actually add that in. So it becomes like this team process if you've done it in the right way. Then the key part is to keep the momentum up. So most companies review salaries once per year. Sometimes they do it twice, and promotions as well. Sometimes they do it twice, but most do once. So what the key thing to do is to not let it die, not let the conversation die until your manager has given you, yes, we are discussing it. If you achieve everything that I've asked of you, then you're going to get what you asked for. And then the discussion becomes, okay, well, what exactly do I need to do, and am I on track? So, and that the conversation's still not dying. So basically the conversation is going to carry on all the way up until the point that you're getting offered a new salary or a promotion. And so your monthly development chats are going to help. You should also have a weekly one-to-one with your manager a minimum fortnightly one. And so you're going to be talking to them about it there if you're not getting enough feedback in your development chats. Monthly is often quite a big gap. So especially at the beginning, after you drop the case, you want to be, okay, is there a budget for this? Am I in the realms of possibility with this? Given that we're getting to a point of alignment on my case, it does seem like a fair ask. Have you sent it to your boss or whoever the person is that might approve it? If you don't know who approves it, ask who approves it. If it's your manager, great. Then there's only one person to convince. If it's put someone above, if it goes to a board, often sometimes it goes to like a board of people or an SLT and they have to approve everything, then fine. You know at that point, but you want to know if it's been sent to those people in advance to kind of pre-prepare them that this is something that you're going to be asking for. So the momentum is key. So keep the momentum up. Try not to annoy your manager about it though, because you want them to keep being that cheerleader. So there's a balance to be struck between keeping momentum up while not annoying them. Because if you annoy them, then they're not going to want to help you and they're not want to keep pushing it forward. So you've got to strike that balance, right? And then the last thing to talk about on the negotiation process is the final offer. When you get an offer. So there are a few things to note. You need to know what you're going to do if you get what you want. And sometimes people are a bit shocked when they get told that they're getting what they want. So it's good to have prepared like a thank you so much. That's a good reaction. Thank you so much. Because often your managers worked really hard to get you that. So thanking them is really important and being grateful for the opportunity. So that's be ready with that. If you don't get what you want, it's still really good to thank them, especially if there's something. If there's no increase, maybe you wouldn't do it as vigorous of a thank you. But if there's some increase in salary or responsibility, you're still going to thank them. Thanks so much for the effort here, because often it's other forces, not your manager's control, that's stop you from getting everything that you want. So thank you so much. Could we and then you might ask, could we discuss it a bit? I know this isn't quite all the way of what I asked for. Could you tell me a bit more about why that is? I'm sure there's a good reason for it. And then you can discuss it. And then you could say, okay, I'm going to go away and think about this. I really appreciate the time and effort that you've put in. You might just accept it there because you might be happy with a little bit less given the reasons. And then you'd say, okay, I'm really happy. Thank you so much. If not, then you say you're going to go away. And you do have to be prepared to leave the business at this point if you really aren't getting what you want. If you say even that they've held your salary flat and you really needed that salary increase, you really wanted it, you have to be at a point where you're prepared to leave. And I would be transparent with my manager at a minimum that at that point that, okay, well, this is quite a way off what I wanted and I needed to see a salary increase here. So I'm just going to need to go away and do some personal thinking at this point. And I'll come back to you once I've had a think about it. And then I would probably be transparent about the fact that I was thinking about leaving, but it depends how much trust you have with your manager. If you don't have trust and you think they might actually just get rid of you if you said that, then absolutely do not say that. You need to protect yourself and protect your future and make sure you don't have a gap in your earnings. It's better to wait and get a new job at that point before you tell your manager. So you just want to have the different options ready, know which ways that you could go and have a response prepared. And as hard as it sounds, be prepared to leave if you're not getting what you want. I would say that even if you don't get fully what you want, I didn't when I got my first raise after my first negotiation. I'd asked for 8K and I got 6, but I've wholeheartedly accepted it, and I was absolutely buzzing with that because it made me realize that I could get what I wanted. I was worth what I was. I was worth more. And it was a really positive trajectory. And there were some good reasons why it wasn't all the full 8K that I'd asked for. So there's often a lot of good reason to accept something, even if you've not got quite what you want. Maybe even the business has like a limit on how much you can get or something like that. Things like that happen. So think about your responses, accept, or at least make your feelings known if you're not very happy with it. before I got my 12K, I made known that, for example, I made known that I'd be very unhappy with getting no raise that year. And then I made my case, I made it very clear. So it's good sometimes to make your feelings known. So those are the 3 steps. We've got all the way through it. So those are my 3 steps to negotiating a raise in 2025, minimizing the stress and anxiety, and maximizing your chance of success. They are: create a compelling, strong and aligned case, aligned with your manager and the business and the director and directions that they're going. Create that initial proposal to your manager that doesn't shock them, brings them on board, starts to bring them on board as a cheerleader for your success, and then negotiate effectively, discuss, take on board feedback, keep up the momentum, and then have your responses ready for that offer and be prepared to leave. So please give it a shot. Yeah, and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions about any of the steps in the comments. I would love to help. And yeah, if you want any additional help, if you feel like a comment on the video isn't enough, then there are 2 things that you could do. The first thing is you could book a call with me. It's completely free. You just book a call in the description. There's a link to book a call. I'm free every weekday, and we can discuss how I might be able to help you, and I can discuss any of your questions about this video or any of my other videos in more detail. The other thing that you can do is you could sign up to my newsletter. I have a free free weekly newsletter, and I share every week different skills and strategies, things that I'm learning, mistakes I've made for you to avoid, anything that might help you to progress more quickly in your career or grow your salary more quickly as well. So drop me a comment, book a call, sign up to the newsletter, and just let me know how you find the framework and the 3 steps. I'd love to hear from you.